I'm happy to talk to you about dinosaurs in scriptures today. My oldest boy got really into dinosaurs, loved them. We had so many books and toys about dinosaurs, and I got kind of tired of reading about this millions of years thing, and I learned about it. So we would go on trips, and everywhere would go. This is in Moab. We'd look at the dinosaurs, and it was really fun to see. What I'm going to present to you today is that dinosaurs were created by God. They did live with man. They were killed during the Great Flood. There's much evidence. So, well, millions of bones. We could say not millions of years, but there are millions of bones. After the flood, some lived on. They were called dragons. That's why there's so many legends of dragons in continents separated by oceans. Millions of years ago is a false idea. We didn't evolve. We were created by God, and there are not transitional fossils, and that the doctrine is clear in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and in the scriptures for all Christians. So they were killed in a flood. So now that I've told you, you can all leave happily knowing what happened. My goal is to build faith in God. I believe faith is being destroyed, really, and attacked on all fronts in our world right now. So atheism is taking over, and science is one of those fronts. There's many fronts, but science, it's infiltrated everything. But this is not to dispute. I don't want to argue with somebody that believes in evolution with their whole heart. There are people I know that send their kids on missions and they read their scriptures and worship God and they believe in evolution. And I'm going to say, go ahead. But there are some very real dangers to it that I'll go over as well. But ultimately, we are trying to come to Jesus Christ. And Neil Anderson talked that in the last 10 years, 30 million people have stepped away from believing in Jesus Christ, from being Christians, and that more will leave in the future. So it's a pretty scary proposition, seeing what our world is in, and you start seeing political turmoil and the confusion that people are in and all the things that we're faced with, and you know why. But we can know the hidden treasures of knowledge. We're taught that in Scripture, and we should obtain a knowledge of history, countries, and kingdoms. Now, Ammon was a great prophet in the Book of Mormon, and he taught King Lamoni after he had saved the sheep. And he began at the creation of the world and the creation of Adam. So the creation is a very important topic. It's the first thing that Ammon taught about. Our own prophet back before when he was an elder, Nelson, said the human body is amazing, first of all. Then he said some people erroneously think that these marvelous physical attributes happened by chance, resulted from a big bang somewhere. Ask yourself, he continues, could an explosion in a printing shop produce a dictionary? The likelihood is most remote, but if so, it could never heal its own torn pages or reproduce its own newer editions. The human body is amazing. 100 trillion synapses in the brain. Just unbelievable. More galaxies than the stars. Elder, the prophets all testify of the creation. In our increasingly secular society, it's unfashionable to speak of Adam and Eve or the Garden of Eden. Moses talks about the creation. How many times is the creation mentioned in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in our church? If you're a member of our church, I'm assuming most of you are members. If you're not, please forgive me, as I mentioned to it, as the church or our church, and know that this is some great scripture. Anyway, 4 times we have the creation: Genesis, Abraham, Moses, and where's the 4th? I'll let you think about that for a second. God blessed them and said, it says that in the last days there will be scoffers in 2 Peter. And saying all things continue as they were from the beginning, a uniformitarianism view that's adopted in the long millions of years philosophy of science. They're willingly ignorant of the word of God. They're standing whereby the world was overflowed with water, a flood. Now on Facebook, I believe this was a member of the church, an active person that believed in God, said, I personally believe the biblical account of Adam and Eve is just a story. So it's a dangerous place when we start taking the scriptures as metaphor and not fact, truth, historical accounts. This is the guy being taught in our schools, in our science books. I have here a science book that has over 30 references, chapter headings or section headings that have evolution in the title. And Charlie here is mentioned, Charles Darwin, yes, is mentioned very heavily in here, very heavily. You sit on a throne of lies. There's so many lies derived from evolution. There's no accountability to God, no heaven and no hell. Genders can evolve and change. The laws of the jungle. The fittest survive, right? Eat, drink, and be merry. And there's really not a single scientific advancement or anything that's helped us progress because of the theory of evolution. If anything, I'll show you in a little bit, it's hindered us. Families are not important. We're closer to apes than God. And if we teach our children that they're like apes, what are they going to act like? They're going to act like apes, right? So this is Bill Nye. I used to listen to him in high school, I think every Friday, I believe. And he has a real catchy slogan. So this is Bill Nye. I'm not going to play it all, but he's a catchy, fun teacher. He's very educational. And now he's promoting climate change and he's out doing his thing. And this is on Netflix now. This guy is a youth celebrity and a role model. And he went on Netflix and talked about how gender is a spectrum. And at the end of him teaching that there are multiple genders, many genders, they sang this song and kind of he's over here head bonging. And this is rated PG-13. Sorry, but you can read the words here. But it's evolution ain't nothing new is part of the song. This is some riotous, horrific thing. But this is very real. And I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to play it because it is drag queen, drag king, just do it feels right. There's nothing taboo about sex too. It's evolution, once again, nothing new. This is what evolution teaches. I know this may be looking really extreme, but most of the communist ideology taught a revolution that the strong overthrow the weak. It's a natural part and that they help it along. Okay? A central plank in Marxist doctrine today, the Nazis were convinced that evolution had taken place and that we were to remove the lesser species. Read Charlie Darwin's book. Most of it's taken out, but it used to be called the preservation of favored races. It's a racist ideology, really. If you look at what Hitler did, he took the Jews, he believed the lesser people, the crippled, and all of the gypsies, and anyone he thought was a lesser species, not the Aryan race, and he exterminated them, right? We know that. So the foundation of Chinese socialism rests on Darwin and the theory of evolution. Mao Zedong, what did he do? He killed many million of his own people. The first of many sad and horrific school shootings was this kid Eric who wore a shirt that day that said natural selection on his shirt. He wanted to get rid of all the stupid and weak organisms. And he did it on Hitler's birthday. Yes, horrific stuff. Mass genocide of abortion because they believe they're just a clump of cells. And we talked about changing genders. But the truth is God, sorry, I want to get away from all that negative and get into that God created this beautiful, beautiful earth for us. Nephi went all the way back to get this information from Laban and sacrificed his life, literally, to go get these plates so that their family could have the 5 books of Moses, which gave an account of the creation of the world. How important was this to the Lamanites and Nephites going forward? So important. Second Nephi, having a knowledge of the creation of the earth, all men knowing the great and marvelous works of the Lord from the creation. And they had fallen away here. So he said, why did they fall away? Why will they dwindle after knowing about the creation? And I think it's if you first distort the idea of the creation. Eve was the mother of all living. That's important to remember. This is in the scriptures. The scriptures testify of the truth in the creation. God was so smart when he mentioned he created all the fish of the sea and the whales. He mentions one specific animal or kind or species, whatever you want to call it. He also mentions the cattle. So he mentions 2 specific types of animals to say, look, I created the cattle and the whales. I didn't create a single cell organism to evolve into apes and then into humans. Okay? This is in scripture because they are not millions. And here is Adam feeding a dinosaur. That's pretty. It's all about our perception, right? Our paradigm. Who sees here a woman, an old woman with a big nose looking down, or who sees a young woman with a feather in her cap looking off to the left? The young woman's necklace is the mouth of the old lady. Some of our colleges and our professors think they are wise, and they do not hearken to the counsel of God, and their wisdom is foolishness, profiteth them. Let's get into where dinosaurs are mentioned in the scriptures. First is Job 38. Here we have Job being lectured by God in a way. He's saying, where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. So he is getting, come to daddy and let's talk. You want to borrow the car keys, son? Who pays the bills around here, right? Remember your place. And then he mentions the creation of a lion, a raven, a goat, an ass, and all these animals. And he continues on to mention Behemoth. Behemoth eats grass, his strength is his loin, and in the navel of his belly, and he's the chief. His tail is like a cedar tree. His bones are strong as pieces of brass, and his bones are like bars of iron. This is a strong, big animal. He is the chief of all the ways of God. He is huge. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. So assuming there that no one else can approach him. And he lives in the swamps, the reed and the fens. So this is amazing because if we would use the scriptures and science together, imagine what we could learn about these animals, that they lived in the swamps. Drinketh up a river, big, massive animal. Is this just an elephant? Some people think it's an elephant or a hippo. Does this look like a cedar tree to you? How about this? Is that a cedar tree tail to you? It doesn't look like a cedar. They're wonderful big animals, but it's not a cedar tree. These are bones of iron. Look at the size of these huge brachiosaur mostly bones. This to me is a tail of a cedar tree. This is a behemoth. What a massive animal. Amazing creature, the chief of all the ways of God. Now Leviathan. Canst thou draw Leviathan with a hook? Canst thou put a hook in his nose, assuming that he's so strong you cannot catch this creature? None is so fierce. His scales are his pride, so he's a scaly animal, and no air can come between his scales. Out of his mouth going burning lamps and fire, smoke breathing, fire breathing animal here. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Is that even possible, right? The arrow cannot make him flee, darts are counted as a stubble, and laugheth at the spear. So he's a big animal. I think this could be a Chronosaurus or a Mosasaurus. And I have some mosasaur teeth over at our booth for sale. This can't be, Jeremy. You're crazy. Those are millions of years old. They can't have lived with man. They would have killed them all, right? Well, there were fiery serpents in the Book of Mormon. In the time of Moses with the Israelites traveling in the wilderness because they were being wicked. So God sent these flying fiery serpents mentioned in the Book of Mormon as the staff was raised with the brazen or brass serpent that was made as a replica. If they would just look, they could live. And this is a great example of Jesus Christ. If we look to him, we can live. So there were flying fiery serpents, a few more references to that. Some people think it's a snake on a stick. Never seen a snake that flew or had wings. So I don't think so. In ether, there were poisonous serpents on the face of the land and did poison many people, and their flocks did flee. Their flocks, okay? And many people did perish, and it caused they towards the land southward. And it came to ask the Lord to cause the serpents that they should pursue them no more, but that they should hedge up the way that the people could not pass. But who should attempt to flee might fall by the poisonous serpents. Now, I don't know about you, but if a whole bunch of snakes were chasing my flocks and my families and chasing us out of our homes, out of our cities, would you run from a bunch of snakes, or would you get out your sword and chop off their head? Is this the snakes that they're afraid of? These guys here? Okay, they're poisonous, but still, this guy, these are poisonous cobras. This guy, which one are you running from? Or do you think you'd be running from something a little more scary? Like these renditions of the raptor and the Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's a lot more scary to me. So let's go to some artifacts. In Cambodia, there's this carving in the temple wall. I've been to this temple in Cambodia. It's amazing. Those trees growing over are unbelievable. I didn't see this at the time because I didn't even know about this stuff. And now I love it. And I'm so excited next time I go there, I will definitely get a personal picture of that, but it looks to me a lot like a stegosaurus. In ancient Egypt, they have this pottery, and on their pots, they have these long neck animals. Those are some pretty long necks, right? What kind of animal could that be? It looks a lot like a dinosaur to me. Here's carving here in Utah, Native American carving, and I wanted to see this as I was learning about these amazing things. I decided we're going on a family trip. Actually, the picture you saw earlier in Moab may have been one of our trips to Moab, but we drove down after our Moab trip through Natural Bridges National Monument, and I said, I want to find this place. We looked for Kachina Bridge, and we found it, hiked down with our young kids, and we have 2 more now, but that was a fun trip. And we saw some petroglyphs, and we finally said, I think I see it up on that cliff wall, but it was like 12 to 14 feet up. It was so high. I couldn't get up. And being determined that I had traveled felt like the whole country just to get there, I was going to get up there. So I found a log, as you can see, and these 2 rocks under it, and I literally scaled that tree up to this cliff wall, if you can see that. This is up the top. It was crazy. I couldn't get down. There was no way I could get down. I thought about jumping and all sorts of things, but I didn't want to break a leg, and my wife was getting really worried that she would be a widow. So here's a picture of what we found up on the cliff wall. Some petroglyphs, and I've only recently noticed this giant bird that might mean something else, and that little guy next to it, 2-legged animal with 3 toes. And here we are. There is that carving into the cliff wall. Hasn't been doctored. I mean, no one could even get up there. Pretty amazing, right next to those. And luckily someone came by and helped me get down. A guy had to come help boost me down. Now, down the Paluxy River Formation, there is, so this is an interesting story, there was a massive flood that washed away some layers of this river formation and these strata. And a guy by the name of Carl Baugh, Dr. Baugh, went and started excavating some of these dinosaur footprints that were known there, and he found human footprints. This guy is walking along this human footprint path. And I know a guy that has the museum in Nauvoo, Robert Wright. He has a replica of the footprint is on the dinosaur print. It's really awesome. And here's a picture of Dr. Karl Baugh. Oh, I need to put that picture in. More evidence is the cathedral up in England called Bell's Tomb. There it is. Around the border, there's some metal edging. This is his tomb underneath there, I believe. And the edging has these animals, a bird, a bat, a pig, all these animals, and then this long neck creature, these two long necks internecting. I don't know if you call that necking or what. Sorry for that weird joke. They're here in China, the Hongshan carvings, people surrounding this long-necked animal, and they are obviously trying to kill it with spears and looks like maybe bows and arrows. Here's some artifacts that have been found in other cultures. Looks like a man riding on some sort of a dinosaur, and this picture is taken out of Dire Dragons. I have the book here that compares dragon or other type of carvings to dinosaurs. So they may have been ridden on, and they sometimes were getting eaten by these animals, right? Here's a man inside the stomach, and I hope they get their friend out. I don't know what the outcome was, but probably not too great. So dinosaurs lived with man. If you had a pet dinosaur, would you walk your dinosaur, or would your dinosaur walk you? That's my joke. Now, this is an amazing discovery. Blood cells in dinosaur bones are, this is so exciting and so awesome. And just, I mean, we're talking less than 10 years ago, this discovery. And this is an example of science not actually hindering, evolution hindering science, because they're not looking at it properly and discovering what needs to be found here. And this wouldn't have been discovered except by an accident. Mary Schweitzer up in Montana in the Hell Creek Formation, they were transporting a tyrannosaur leg. They found this massive, there's some great finds up there. They were transporting it and they needed to cut it. So since they cut it, she said, why don't we soak it in acid and do some tests on the bone, which they never did before. Nobody wants to cut open these bones, and I mean, they're millions of years old. There's nothing to them but minerals, and there could be nothing to them. So, but she was ostentatious enough to go ahead and try. And what did she find? Yes, she found soft tissues. Let's hear from the video itself.
Would have expected to find it had been modern bone. This was impossible.
Intact cells. Amazing. Interesting. She's absolutely right when she says these things can't even last a million years, let alone 65 million years. Let's ask these questions to this documentary, this interview. Why did she think it was impossible? She first said, I thought it was impossible. So did Jack Horner. Jack Horner is a famous paleontologist. He advised on the Jurassic Park movies. And why would she be ridiculed? That's interesting. Ridiculed in this community of science that's supposed to be open-minded, looking for truth, right? Why was she nervous to tell anybody? It took her courage, okay? It was supposed to be impossible. So it is impossible based on their theory. So we will go into more. We've been up to this museum of the Rockies in Montana, and Mary Schweitzer has a beautiful museum up there with Jack Horner or whoever runs it, but I know they do work up there. So she said here, everyone knows these things don't last 65 million years. Everyone knows how soft tissue degrades. Everyone knows, right? And it will only last 900,000, well, 30,000 years is truly how long it lasts, but there's an outlier study we'll mention, but by all the rules of paleontology, such traces of life should have long drained from the bones, right? Scientists all get to thinking alike, she said, and it's good to bring people in from different disciplines, unless they're creationists. And then they talk about how the Hell Creek Formation always smelled of death. Now that part gets me excited. Smelled of death. They're not going to rethink the age of the dinosaurs. This is collagen. Collagen doesn't have a lot. The studies, the peer-reviewed, professional peer-reviewed studies, 30,000 years. There was one that went 900,000, nothing over a million, and these are 65 million year old dinosaurs. So now they're trying to figure out how these lasted so long. They don't think, oh, maybe they didn't live that long. So anyway, we've got this debate going, good science versus bad science, evolution versus creation. And the evidence for creation is amazing and it's exciting. And here I'm sharing it. But she said it was repeatable, right? She said we did it over and over again. Science has to be repeatable. Evolution is not repeatable, untestable, observable. No one was there to observe what happened. Anyway, why do they do millions of years? Because it leaves plenty of time to fill in the gaps. If I hear millions of years, I know that there's a fun story, a fairy tale's about to come. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, right? That's how it works. Star Wars, we love Star Wars. And a long time ago, in a galaxy far away, you can make up anything you want. Because There's time. You fill in the gaps with time, and that's what they're doing. So how did the dinosaurs die? When did they die? We talked about that. We're going to continue to talk. They died during the flood. The evidence is everywhere. This dinosaur died, had been fighting for its life in a flood moments before it died. The animal might have fallen into a ditch or boggy ground. And this one was flooded into a river and swept it. Why do they have to be in a flood? Because they won't fossilize otherwise, right? This guy here was swept by a flood again, kicking up soupy mud that engulfed it. Swiftly buried by mud. This is an ichthyosaur. It's like a little dolphin with lots of teeth. As we brushed back the sediment laid down by water, right? We guessed that the creature had been buried in minutes, perhaps by a flash flood of an ancient river. It's everywhere. Buried in an actual river channels where others are found out on the floodplains. It always includes water, mud, because otherwise it wouldn't fossil. It says it's 1 in a million chance that it will become fossilized here if it's not buried, because the odds of this one was buried so fast it didn't even have time to finish its dinner. Okay, these fish are up in Kemmer, Wyoming. If you want to go dig for them, we dig for them. It was fun. These centrosaurs were buried, over 1,000 of them all died in the same graveyard up in Canada. I hope to go up there. Spain, 500 in this location. Hadrosaurs were buried here. Dinosaur land in Vernal. There's a wall of dinosaur bones. And I asked the lady there, I said, how did all these bones get to one spot? She said, well, there was an ancient river and the river washed all the bones down. They got buried. I was like, oh, that makes kind of sense. And at the time, I didn't know any better, but these bones are mashed together. There was some massive flooding going on. I just got back from the hurricane zone if you think that Noah, during the time of Noah, that this was a lovely flood where the water raised and you had clear water and tropical and you could dive down and snorkel around with the fish. This was not. When I was after the hurricane, the water was completely murky. Now you imagine tsunami after tsunami of flooding in the world and churning of mud, and a tsunami tears into things. And this is China, a wall of dinosaur bones again. The scientist over there said, scientist Zoo said they lived along riverbanks and died during natural disasters, floods, right? They're drowning. That's why they have this called death pose, where they're choking, their neck is back. Fossilization has to be buried by water. There are millions of bison slaughtered, sadly, in America, and they were not fossilized. How many fossilized bison have you found along the plains? There's really none, because they're not buried. The sediments bury the exoskeleton. The faster this happens, the more likely fossilization will occur. Land and mudslides definitely help. So deer and elk in the mountains do not fossilize. My family hunts, and we go up there and we find dead cows, dead elk, dead deer. The bones are gone in 5 years or less. There was a worldwide flood. This little river didn't cause this massive erosion. There was an event that covered every mountain. We know massive events happen because we've seen them here in 3rd Nephi, where there was so much darkness, the face of the whole earth became deformed from the earthquakes and the things, the tempests. The rocks were rent in twain, right? And all these things happened in about 3 hours on this 3rd section here. And there was thick darkness upon the land. So this is interesting because they couldn't even light a fire. Seems to me like it might have been volcanic ash covering the earth. 3 days there was no light. The people were groaning. Moroni did sink. Moronihah, there was a mountain instead, and the whole face of the land was changed, and great and notable cities were sunk. So we know that these catastrophes happen. We know it happens very much. And one of these catastrophes happened in Mount St. Helens, right? In our lifetimes. Well, not mine, but some of yours maybe. And we have it documented, right? 1980, 80,000 feet of ash. I mean, this was insane. 50 miles. These lahars, which is mud flows and lava mixed with water, and they destroyed everything in their path, trees. Snow and ice melt. I mean, this is the aftermath. Cars buried, and this whole side of the mountain is gone, right? The whole mountain is gone. So it left these layers, and it created an artificial dam on the North Fork of the Toutle River, and there was a lake there for a very short while until the dam broke through, this temporary dam, from all the melted snow and glacier, and then it broke through and carved this canyon on the right. You can see it here. And there's someone here standing, and you can see these layers that were created in a matter of the time of this eruption and this explosion, a few weeks, a very short period, and you can actually see the layers. And this is the canyon that carved 150 feet deep in 2 weeks when that river and dam broke. 2 weeks. There is so much evidence for a worldwide flood, right? Especially when you look at these trees that are buried upright. And they know how this happens now. Because of Mount St. Helens, this tree did not grow for millions of years and have layers and layers grow around it as it sat and grew, excuse me. Or it didn't die and stay upright and not rot for millions of years. Come on, rot would. Anyway, this was fossilized in the mud and the layers were formed around it. There's so much evidence of this all over. So we live in a very fossil-rich area, Morrison Formation up in Wyoming and Montana, and even in Canada. Green River Basin is where we found, look at these layers. The mud, these flows of water laid down the same layer over hundreds and hundreds of miles. This would have been a massive, massive watery event that would have killed everything in its path. Look at these layers, they're beautiful, and they would have been wet. If you look in Provo Canyon, there's that curved. There's also no burrows between the lack of biological activity shows that this didn't last for years and years and years. There really wasn't evidence that the evidence shows that these layers were laid down very quickly. This is proof of Noah's flood. Noah's flood happened, and it would have been a terrible event to be on that ark, to be honest. You know, some of the kids' pictures make it look like a fun little ride with animals, but it would have been the tempests and the waves would have been. But I promise you, you wanted to be on that boat. You did not want to miss the ride, right? Like these guys. There was a lot of animals and a lot of people that died in that flood. Like I said, it probably wasn't a good ride, but it would have been better to be in the boat than dead, right? Because God looked upon the earth and saw it was corrupt, and all flesh was filled with evil and violence. So very sad. So how on earth could Noah have gotten all these animals into this ark, right? And these big, well, I did say dinosaurs went on the ark. Did I say that? Elephants, giraffes. I mean, those are big. Have you seen a male giraffe? Those things are so tall. How would he fit these on the ark, right? I'll tell you what. I think he would have taken babies. Why would you take a full grown when you can take a baby? Babies are cuter. They poop less. They eat less. They probably sleep more, right? And and they're going to have a longer breeding period. Plus, he's not going to take 200 plus species of dog we have today. You definitely wouldn't be taking a Chihuahua or a Shih Tzu Poodle, because I promise you, he didn't have those dogs. We've bred those today. So those interbreeding, and some people call that evolution. Some people call it microevolution, but we definitely don't believe in macroevolution. The fish stayed in the water, and does he need to take bugs? No, bugs have no problem reproducing anywhere in any flood, right? So dinosaurs were most likely, like we said, on the ark. Some of them would have survived, right? Which is pretty revolutionary maybe, but most were killed during the flood. So why didn't they live on after the flood? Well, they did. Some did, and they were called dragons. Okay? So these guys here in Kentucky have built a full-size ark. It's amazing. And in it, they have dragons on their ark. Dinosaurs and / dragons. Same thing. Has the ark been found? There's some interesting evidence of it. In Turkey, they were scanning for missile silos in the 60s, and they found this object. This is the picture they took, and they said, what on earth is that? So they went to investigate it, and just as Genesis said, this is the mountains of Ararat. Okay? And here it is on a green spring or summer. And why did they dismiss it? So they did a 60 minutes on it. They kind of dismissed it. They did some tests on it. And everybody's looking for an ark that was 300 cubits. Verse 15 said in Genesis 6, 300 cubits. A cubit is from here to here. Okay. Now, my elbow to my tip of my fingers, that's a cubit. Mine is about 19 inches. So they're looking about for a 435-foot ark. This was 515 feet. So it didn't match their description. Not only that, but they didn't find any rooms or any, a whole lot of artifacts or any elephant droppings, although later they did. But they went back and studied Moses a little bit more, and Moses was an Egyptian, and he used the Royal Egyptian cubit. And when they took the 20 3/4, I think it is, Royal Egyptian cubit, it was exactly 515 feet and matched. Pretty awesome. They then took metal detectors all over this thing, and every place there was metal, they put a rock. And look at this, metal all in this artifact. They found rooms in the Ron Wyatt Museum in, I believe, Kentucky has this metal rivet looking thing. And they believe this over here on the right is laminated wood. They can see oozing down the side what looks like pitch. Later, they scraped away the sides of the ark-shaped object, and they found what looks like ribbed timbers going up through the soil. You can see the coloration of the soil and the matrix. They're pretty interesting. Then down below in the valley, they found these, what they call drogue stones. So they have markings all over them. They're about 9,000 pounds with a hole for a rope of some sort. And they were dropped in the valley below, or they were found in the valley below. And Ron believes that these were used by ancient mariners as a way to stabilize the boats. And they believe that these were used. Kind of like this is how they would have been used to stabilize that boat. These are called drogue stones with a hole in them, 9,000 pounds used to stabilize that boat. And I think it would have been very necessary with the type of atmosphere we believe that would have been on the earth, the type of water and currents and things like that. It would have been like a bathtub sloshing. It would have been scary and insane. So now in Turkey, they dedicated a location and put a little visitor center for the actual Noah's Ark. Government confirmed it, and there's a road sign. Pretty exciting. Why, back to dinosaurs, why aren't dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible? Well, dinosaur is a new word, right? We don't have computers mentioned in the scriptures or the Book of Mormon or cell phones. Sorry, I don't believe in cavemen. But we'll move on. Dinosaur was made in 1841 by this Sir Richard Owen, handsome looking fella. That's right. That's because these guys were called dragons, right? And that's mentioned all over in the scriptures in the Bible and all over the world. Dragons were everywhere, prevalent. They were well known and they were feared, right? And those of you that love Pete's Dragon, so Pete's dad was very afraid of the dragon as well, but don't worry, Pete's Dragon was nice. We went up to the Museum of the Rockies, which we mentioned earlier, with the soft tissue and blood cells in the dinosaur bones, and we saw the amazing Triceratops and T-Rex, and this guy is who I want to talk about, the Pachycephalosaurus. He hits things with his head, and these three skulls, Jack Horner talks about this one quite a bit, because he says, where are all the baby dinosaurs? And this one here is a juvenile called Dracorex hogwartsia, okay? Dracorex hogwartsia shows a juvenile Pachycephalosaurus. And the juvenile, it's interesting because the word Draco Rex Hogwartsia, Draco meaning dragon, but look at that skull. So here we have it again. It looks a lot to me like, here's some drawings that someone sketched of a dragon. It looks to me a lot like that skeleton, right? And obviously over time, and not everyone's a great artist, you're not going to have exact sketches, but these ones come close. And we know in the Book of Mormon that they fought like dragons, right? It says in the Book of Mormon, how do they know how dragons fought? Is that because they had myths about them? I believe it's because they knew about dragons and they had dragons. Once again, they're fighting like dragons. And they were fighting for their freedoms, right? And their wives and their children for a better cause. And they did fight, and then they won, which was wonderful. How did they know what dragons fought like? Is it because they had myths? Well, Jeremy, don't you know that alligators are like dragons and they must have seen them fighting? Is this what you mean by a fierce dragon fighting like this reptile? Probably not. Or would you think more like these? That is a little scary to me, right? So the history testifies also of the creation, that dinosaurs lived with man, that dinosaurs were dragons. Most of them were killed during the flood, but some of them lived on, and that we did not evolve. Evolution is a lie. It's not millions of years that these animals lived with man. And it says it in the scriptures. It proves the scriptures correct, that they're not crazy, that these dragons may have very well been dinosaurs. Here's St. George slaying a dragon. He was very famous. I'll show you some more sculptures of him. And if you put this thing standing up and not laying down, but it looks to me, and it's had a tail, straight tail and no wings, it looks to me a whole lot like a raptor or a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a small one, right? And there was something that happened after the flood in the world where animals were smaller, and we believe people may have been smaller. We know there were giants, however, but there's a lot to go into on that. St. George was famous. He's got a statue in the town square for slaying this dragon. It must have been terrorizing their town. Here's a story about George. Here's another statue of him in Sweden. Westminster Abbey in the cathedral, on the walls. I mean, these dragons that got slayed, they were terrorizing people. Tristan slayed a dragon. There's stories of him. In Krakow, Poland, I happened to be studying the Holocaust one day, and I read about the history of Krakow, and it talked about a dragon was terrorizing the king's people, and a young peasant boy was brave enough to go slay this dragon because they had to feed it sheep to keep it away from the people. So now today there's a fire-breathing dragon in their town square in Poland. We know about Merlin became famous because he had a vision of two dragons fighting. Story of Beowulf in Old English. Yes, that's really English. I can't read it either. Dragon slayers became heroes because the dragons were so scary. Everyone wanted to slay a dragon and be a hero. Here's another dragon slaying picture. There's so many, you know, anyone around town wants to go get one on their wall, right? Let's get one on your wall. Let's be famous. And if there's a dragon around town, everyone's going to grab their sword and run for it. Here's an ancient gate of Babylon, located in Saudi Arabia. There's 3 animals on it. There's a lion, a calf or a cow of some kind, and this animal. Slithering, snake-like, long claws on its feet, 4 legs. Interesting, right? Looks like a dragon. The Chinese calendar has 11 real animals, including a snake, so it's not a snake, and a dragon, right? There's a lot of dragon tails in China as well. So there's flags of Bhutan and Wales that are today, this is their flag, a dragon. Now I had the opportunity to go to this, I was looking for ancient books and I went to the University of Utah and they said, here, wash your hands. They put down this Bible, this old bestiary showing ancient animals. And this is what I found. Elephants, horses drawn. Yeah, their elephant pictures are a little funny, of course. But tell me what these animals are. They've got a little bit of wings and they look kind of weird too, and they're fierce. And over here, they're feeding them on the right. They're handing them a piece of meat. Don't feed the animals. We know don't feed the bears, right? There's a little closer look up, and it's in Greek, so I couldn't read it. I was just doing the picture book like my kids do. my little girl, she just looks at the pictures. And really interesting. We've got legends of griffins, legends of phoenixes, and here we have these winged animals. We have in the scriptures a cockatrice, right? What's a cockatrice? Maybe an extinct animal. There was somewhat like a dragon. This one ate this cow and was going through its body. And Marco Polo was a great explorer. He's got a book, and he talks about the emperor having pulled his chariots with dragons, and that in the royal palace there was a dragon feeder. That was his position, to feed their dragons. I wonder what kind. Now I'm running out of time, so I am going to skip ahead. Chinese dragons on everywhere, right? All their temples and architecture. A lot was going on in China with the swamps. Here's a old mosaic tile artwork of Palestrina, very famous mosaic. Has a lot of animals on here, lions and different animals. And there's one over here in the swamps. Looks like a different type of animal. Looks to me like some sort of a dragon. There's also this Gloucester mosaic with these long-necked sea monster-looking animals. There's some fish. And then there's these animals that have their necks intertwined. In ancient maps, it said Hic sunt dracones, which means here be dragons, beware. There were dragons places, don't go there. They're dangerous. We have those signs today, bears. And if a bear shows up, it's gone the next day. We're going to get rid of it. And that's what they did, I believe, with these dragons, is they hunted them. There's a jade carving in China of these. This looks a lot to me like a protoceratops or a triceratops without the horns. So their dragons had mustaches and different kinds of, things are going to be distorted over time, legends, all sorts of dragons on pottery. The Vikings had dragons on all their ships, really. Fafnir was a Viking, famous Viking. There were different kinds of dragons. There were drakes and hydras and so many dragons in different cultures, right? This book we talked about compares dinosaurs to dragons. Beautiful book I have. Dire Dragons, I recommend you look into it. Korean dragons, we're going to skip ahead. I have a dictionary here that says dragons are now rare. I hold that dictionary in my hand. So many dragon legends. I just don't believe that they came from nothing. I believe that they came from dinosaurs living with man. So many dragon books and stories for our kids. So why does all this matter that there's dragons? It's because we're at war. Evolution is tearing away slowly at faith. And we did not evolve from apes. We were created in the image of God. And he also created these dinosaurs. And we can just use it to share with people that I know evolution is a lie. Elder Uchtdorf said, lift where you stand. And that's what I'm trying to do. Something that's interesting and exciting to me, I'm trying to share it. Elder Packer said, surely no one with reverence for God could believe that his children evolved from slime or from reptiles. We are children of God. And behold, all these things have their likeness. Jesus Christ will come in the meridian of time. And all things have their likeness. All things are created and made to bear record of me. They bear record of Jesus Christ, both things which are temporal and things which are spiritual, things which are in the heavens above and things which are on earth, and things which are in the earth and things which are under the earth. All things testify of God, and these animals and this history testifies of God, that he is a great creator. And the more I learn about the creation, the more amazed I am. There's resources, the universal model, answers in Genesis. There's books to teach your children, to educate yourself. God's design for science, complete curriculum. There's the Answers book for kids, the study Bible, teaching the kids that dinosaurs did not evolve into us. They didn't evolve into birds, and they didn't evolve, and that we are direct ancestors from our Heavenly Father. There's a museum in Nauvoo Robert Wright made. I got a chance to talk to him about it. There's Thunderbird legends, which are amazing. Here's some interesting pictures of some birds. I don't know if these are accurate or not, but these were shot by somebody, hung on the wall, or they're a big hoax. But I mean, there may have been pterosaurs still living, who knows, sea serpents or legends. And today there's long neck sea serpents. Lake Champlain has this many sightings. They've made a billboard for it, made a sign to show how many sightings they've had. This lady took this picture, the Mancy photo, and she has just passed away a few years ago, but she took this picture. She said she watched it for 10 minutes. I don't know why she only took one photo, but she watched it for 10 minutes, took this photo. And when she was interviewed about it, they said, some people say you just saw a big duck. And she says, yeah, a 2,000-pound duck. She says she heard it, saw it go underwater a little bit later, and about 30 seconds later, she heard a boat. She said it had extremely sensitive hearing. It was gone. We know about Loch Ness, 22 miles long, 900 feet deep, almost 900 feet. It's a massive lake. There's all these little sightings. If you can go look, there's over 1,100 sightings. Last time I looked on the website, people have these things. Why aren't they found? Who knows? But these are some other lakes where there have been sightings of some sort of creatures in the lochs, in the lakes. Italy, Canada, Iceland, Scotland, right? Now, this one interests me in the Congo jungles. Congo is one of the most unexplored regions of the earth because it's so thick and dense and nasty, really swampy. They have a sighting of this animal they call the Mokele Mbembe, one who stops the flow of rivers, and they're deathly afraid of it. But they know what it eats. They say it eats the Malumbo plant, and that there's no hippos or crocodiles near it because it's so aggressive. And here's a book by a scientist called Roy Mackle, and a living dinosaur. Here's a picture of a footprint they found. They believe it's from this creature. Some people say it's an elephant, but an elephant does not have claws on the toes like this one does. Here's a guy that's still going over looking to get a photograph of it, but you have to understand he travels on a dirt road in the mud for 3 days in Africa. If you've ever been to Africa, Africa is crazy. It's different. It's not like here where you hop in your car. 3 days on a dirt road before he gets to the river, and then he travels another day up the river just to get to the location where there have been sightings. So it's very difficult to get in the area. Here's one of the footprints you just saw. They've seen the vegetation where in one part there was 18 feet up of no vegetation that was eaten away. What they'll do is they'll also go to the locals. They'll bring pictures, and they'll flip through these pictures of a bear, a North American bear, and elk, a deer, and say, "Do you have these animals?" And they'll say, "No, no, no." And then they'll show a long-necked dinosaur, and they'll say, "Yes, we have that." Pretty interesting. National Geographic sent this guy out, this young kid on the left, and he asked this eyewitness who saw it. He said, and he's explaining it here, and he speaks French. This is, I believe, Cameroon, and he says, "It came out of the water. It scared me and my wife to death when we were fishing." And he said, "Well, do you think that was a crocodile? Because sometimes crocodiles will come out of the water, and it's really scary." And this African fella here, he looks at this guy, this white guy, and just laughs. And he says, "You don't even understand, do you?" Just laughed. But we think the locals are just fools. They don't know. How could they know? How could they know that there's a living dinosaur? They're not educated in science. Well, the jungle gorilla was only found in 1901. It may have been the mountain gorilla. That was unknown to science. And the okapi was something that was, here's the okapi on the left, a zebra mixed with a giraffe. And the locals said, "We have a giraffe zebra." And the scientists didn't believe them until they killed one and brought out the skin. They said they don't know, but So they, just because they're not uneducated doesn't mean they can't recognize something, right? Here's a megalodon sightings. Um, who knows? There's just a lot we don't know. Faith opens our possibilities. What we do know is God created us, and evolution really stops progress. Thanks for listening. Here's some more quotes from prophets. Organic evolution is a dangerous philosophy from Ezra Taft Benson. We can go into the missing links of Lucy. That's fun stuff. There's so much information against this. It's just amazing about the quote unquote missing links. This is supposedly this Lucy, this evolving ape, and the bones they found of her are how many? Did they look at her feet? Look at the whites in her eyes. How many bones did they find? Did they find any feet bones? Not a single bone. That's her knee at the most. And later they found that the neck bone didn't even connect. And that's, they reconstructed a complete body and hair and everything. And they call this science when it's really creating. Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is on the face of the earth. For there is a God, he has created all things. He created all things through his word. Believe in God, believe that he created all things. There is a God, and he has created all things. Believe in God, he created all things, both in heaven and earth. The creation itself testifies of Creator. We cannot disregard the divine in the creation. From our prophet, back then, Elder Russell M. Nelson. So there's so much more to talk about why dinosaurs got so large. Maybe we'll talk about them another time. How Noah could testify that we are children of God and that he created this earth and everything for us. It's a beautiful thing. Enjoy this music with the prophets made by Vince Neumeier.
Flesh and the bone of his bone. We are literally children of God. We are human beings. Each soul is comprised of body and spirit.
don't know where to compare them, that's for sure. It's like going on a mission to compare your whole life.